Hi, this is TapCat, and welcome to what is easily the installment of Planet Coaster that is the longest in the making. Now, if you missed the channel update I uploaded recently, I will summarize here. Basically, because the nature of this series has changed so much, and I've gone from showing how to manage a park and do kind of a light build to now I'm really going out of my way to try to create these, very detailed environments. There's no way I can upload an installment every other day. And honestly, I'm not even putting a schedule on it anymore. We're just going to do a new one when I get one ready, when I have a new area that's ready to show. So I had a devil of a time with this installment. Because my first challenge was even finding something that would work for this area that's going to act as kind of an entryway to the pirate village. And so I initially started off thinking I would hollow out this big area that would be, like a little lagoon or mini pool, whatever you want to call it. But two pirate ships would be battling each other. And I finished it, and it looked fine as far as it goes. But it was too similar to the area we already had built that involved a dark ride with, a ride that basically already had that in it. And so I had this enormous area of the park that I felt like it's just a duplicate of something that's already here. So I scrapped it. And the problem was figuring out something to go in its place. And so I didn't have a good idea. So I wasn't really even working on the park for a number of days. And finally, I had a thought, and that was a pirate's grotto. So a kind of sea cave, and you would come in through a narrow entrance near the main hub of the park, and you would come out to a broader exit that kind of opens up on the wider ocean and reveals the things that we've already built. And when you're in the cave, you would see things, now what would that be? Okay, we'll get into that in a little bit. But that was my concept. Then I just had to figure out what I was going to put in there. So what does that look like? Well, I started off by experimenting, with different plants and different lighting and, were there any props at all that I could use, different scenery, pretty much of any kind. And so one of the things that I settled on very early was that I wanted to have a waterfall inside the cave. That seemed like a natural fit. And I admit I am still very inexperienced when it comes to making waterfalls. But this is our second one in this park. And so essentially what I did is I just used a bunch of the large water spout, little special effect doohickeys, and placed those at an angle so that it would look like it's coming down the cave wall. And if I were starting it from scratch now, I'd like to think that it would look better than it does. But overall, I'm actually pretty happy with it. And, I guess that's all I can say on that. It took a good while to do, and I kept, I would finish, and I should put that in air quotes, and then I'd look at it a little later and go, no, it needs more here, it needs more there. But by the time I finally got done tinkering with it, I think it came out okay. So the whole time though, even when I was finished with the waterfall, mostly what I was trying to do was prove to myself that I could even make this concept work before I put, for lack of a better term, a roof on the cave. Because I knew it would take a lot of terraforming, a lot of time to do that. And I'd already gone down one road that ended up being a complete dead end for me. And I just had to scrap all that. So I thought, well, let me kind of do this as a proof of concept. And I was happy enough with the results so far that I decided to go ahead and do the rest of that terraforming. Now, I knew even before I did it that this was a little bit of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, I felt like it was important for me to put the roof on so that I could see the lighting that we would actually get, when it was finished. So as I'm placing these plants and lights and different things, like, I need to know what it's going to look like outside of the sunlight. And so that was important. But at the same time, it makes it so much trickier to maneuver the camera around. And in fact, unfortunately, that was totally true, because what would keep happening to me as I worked is the camera would just pop outside of the cave and I'd have to keep coming back into it. And it was a royal pain. But we got there. And even the terraforming part, like, I would finish it and then I would look at it later and go, no, I need to extend this part, or I need to do this and that. So this was very much a process from beginning to end that I had a rough concept for, but I didn't have a true detailed plan. And I guess you could really say that about everything we've done in the park up to this point. I don't really want to map this out on graph paper or something. It's just not how I'm interested in approaching it. And there's advantages and disadvantages to that. So anyway, once I had the terrain kind of shaped, at least in broad strokes, the way I wanted it, then I started focusing more on the lighting, because now I could, And when I started, I had thought, well, maybe we'll do all the lights green. And that could be kind of a cool look. And I actually do think it's kind of a cool look. But it wasn't very long before I decided I didn't want it to be monochrome like that. And the name that I kind of came up with just in my own mind as I was approaching this, and as far as the overall motif, would be what I thought of as a cave of wonders. So I wanted there to be all these different colors and things that you would see that would be, strange and wonderful. And honestly, I can't say that this completely lives up to what I would like it to be in that regard. But, I did my best. So anyway, once I got off of the all green, I started using different colors and trying to match the color of light to what would be sitting in the area that light would be shining on, because certain colors really complement certain types of objects more than others. I also did anything I could think of that would add points of interest to the cave. So whether that would be items from scenery, in the game, or using terraforming. So I tried to craft, I don't know if it's a stalagmite or a stalactite that comes down from the ceiling, but I tried crafting a few of those, and they're not great, so that's why I only did a few, and they definitely took some time to do as well. But even with just a few, it adds a little bit of character to the cave, and I like that. I also ended up, I kind of wanted to avoid this because I felt like it was a little stereotypical, but I did end up, for the sake of being able to put more things in here that would create something to look at that might be interesting, I did make it like a pirate lair theme as well. So I had some lookouts and some treasure, and had the idea of, we can hang this metal cage with the skeleton in it, and the idea is, one of their former comrades had probably turned traitor and tried to steal their treasure. So his punishment was to be imprisoned and starved to death, literally within sight of what he was trying to steal. And I kind of like that idea, actually. It's the, I guess, morbid part of my sense of humor. And I would have even really liked to have developed that whole concept more of the pirates like I thought, what would be cool is if you had a table and just a couple of pirates sitting there like playing cards or something like that. But the problem is there's very limited animatronics in the game. Like there's basically one pirate who's shooting from cover, one pirate that they call angry shooting, who's just not crouching, and then a lookout with a telescope. And that's it. Those are your big options. So I think I used all three in one form or another, but you can't have a lot of nuance, shall we say. Or if you can, then somebody's more clever than I am, because I couldn't really see how to do it. So anyway, another idea, I've had this one for a while, and I decided this would be a good place to explore it, because it does need to be, well, it doesn't need to be in a dark area, but I think it helps. And that's to create pools of water that resemble the hot springs in a place like Yellowstone. And basically, the way the pools work in real life, the water is super hot, and the bacteria that lives in the water, this is actually pretty trippy. So like the water is all hot, but they're not all the exact same temperature. And depending on the bacteria that happens to thrive in that exact temperature, the color of that spring will be different from another one. So some are this really pretty, vivid blue, and then another one can be a green, and so forth. And this is a real thing in the world. I'm not making this up. And then, so I tried to just bring that idea here. And you can say it's the algae or bacteria or whatever, who cares? But the idea is you would have these colored pools. Now, the challenge in doing that in Planet Coaster is that light in the game does not work well with water. The water, it just doesn't react the way it would in real life. So if you just put a colored light underneath the surface of the water or shining down on the surface of the water, it does nothing. Literal nothing. So a long time ago, not a long time ago, but I had this idea. So what we did is we took roof tiles and colored them and then shined a light up through those tiles so that it would, illuminate them in the color that I wanted. The color that worked best by far was blue. Like if you want a vivid blue, it's got a blue bias as far as I can tell, so that worked. But green worked pretty well too. It took me a while to get the color I was happy with, but it works too. So anyway, that was a big part of the focus too. And most of the right-hand side of the cave, that's kind of where I went with that. And in general, I felt like the left-hand side of the cave came as you come in from the main hub. Turned out a little better than the right-hand side. I feel like it needs more something. So this next piece is actually pretty typical of how I work a lot of times. I had told myself at this phase I was done, and I had actually started recording the wrap up and editing the video and everything. But the more I thought about this bridge, it had been bugging me pretty much from the beginning. And I just really didn't like this sandstone surface. It didn't fit with what I wanted the cave to be. And I had left it alone largely because of the fact that doing it, changing that in here on a straightaway is one thing, but when we move forward far enough and it becomes a circle, that's much more of a problem. So I had found these flatbed rail cars a long time ago and thought about using them as a new floor for the bridge, but because of the circular area and knowing that it wouldn't work there, I backed away from it and I left it alone. So anyway, when I say, this is typical for me, a lot of times I tell myself I'm done with something, and then I think, but it really could be better if I did whatever. And so I do it. And that's what I did here. The more I thought about it, I thought, okay, you know what? Even if I have to leave the other area, the circular area, the way it is, that's not the end of the world. I can do something good in here, so let's do that. And by the way, I did ultimately come up with a plan for out there as well, which we'll get into in our next installment. But yeah, I really wanted to improve this. So before the part that you're seeing now where I created this floor, I also got rid of, it used to have a bright blue metal railing, and that was really horrible. It was just such a poor fit with, the theme and the feel in here. So getting rid of the railing and having that wood as without a rail on the edge, just that was even a nice improvement. But bringing this out here, I thought was also a real step up. And it took a little while, but we got there. Now, besides just putting a floor on, as you can see, the wheels for the flat car were pretty visible on the side, and I wanted to fix that. So I used something that I believe was actually intended to be a shelf in the game to create, just a simple railing going along the side and hide that. That's actually one of the things that I think is really cool about Planet Coaster is that there's a lot of objects that on the surface it's meant to be used as one thing. But if you're willing to step back and take a look at it from a different angle, a lot of times you can repurpose it for something very different and it will work really well. So, this was a very easy thing to do, relatively speaking. And I thought really added a subtle but nice touch to the bridge. Similarly, I also found pieces that I thought would make a nice new rail. There wasn't one, how can I say this? Like for the path options, there wasn't one that I could pick that I wanted. And this I thought really was pretty good. It would probably be even better for an Old West area, but I don't know. I mean, it was a crude wooden structure, and I thought that was a good fit overall. We are going to do something a little different when we get out to the circular area, but again, that'll be in the next installment. Now, I also had one more thing. I had done some bamboo torches out in that circle and brought it in just a little ways onto the bridge. And especially once I did all of this, I thought, you know what? I feel like this will really be enhanced by just bringing those torches all the way through. And, I feel like in the end it actually made the bridge brighter, which in itself I think was worth doing. But I also thought it gave, again, like a subtle but nice overall boost to the atmosphere. All right, so when all was said and done, how did it turn out? Well, let's take a look at the more or less finished product. Obviously, out front, we have this archway that I downloaded from the Steam Workshop. It acts as the main entrance to this part of the park. I don't know if this is what I would make if I were designing it from scratch, but overall, I actually do think it's quite nice looking. And if I had designed something from scratch, it probably wouldn't have turned out this well. So maybe it's for the best. So when all was said and done, how did it turn out? Well, I decided to let you see that from a camera perspective following the first family that'll ever go through here. And I'm actually going to shut up for a little while and let you make up your own mind. All right, I hope you enjoyed the Pirate Grotto, but that's going to do it for now. Thanks for watching. I hope we see you next time.